Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the One of Us podcast. We are so excited that you guys are here with us today. Today's a very special day as we have our first guest on the podcast.
Hey.
We got Hope. Hope is one of our dearest friends. We met years and years ago in college, bonded. We've been in it, through it. We've gone through a lot together, but she's such a sweet and dear friend, so I'm so excited to have you here with us today, Hope.
I'm happy to be here too.
So today we're just going to be talking to Hope, interviewing, asking her questions, and just getting to know her life a little bit deeper. We're just so excited. So to start off, Hope, tell us a little bit about, briefly, just how we met, how we got here, just so people have context.
How we met and how we got here. If you compare those two things, you'd be a little shocked, okay? But I'm going to lay it on you anyways. So we met my freshman year of college. Everybody, well, me and Chris were freshmen. Tati and Vic were sophomores? ?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I got my details right. I met them all through chemistry class and InterVarsity, kind of all at the same time. Arturo, who you all know, originally introduced me to all of them at a Thursday night large group session. And there was an incident that happened with Vic. We don't have to share it.
It's okay.
We kind of started off on the wrong foot, but then we realized we were in the same chemistry class. And Tati, didn't you join in our chemistry class, or was that Juan, or what happened?
That was Crystal.
Oh, Crystal! Duh. Oh my gosh, Crystal, because then Crystal ended up doing better in me than me in chemistry, and I was the one tutoring her, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so there was a whole chemistry thing.
The funny thing about this story, we actually did like a short clip last week. We'll have to post it and kind of tag this podcast because we shared this story in depth about just our chemistry saga. So that's where it all began.
Then just tune into that, check that one out, and you'll get all the details. But yeah, so once we bonded in chemistry.
That was a good one.
Hey, oh, wow.
Snaps.
That was a smart joke. Wow.
Sometimes I can be smart. Not when I'm actually being tested on chemistry, though. So it was really bad. Anyway, so we bonded, and then we became besties, and we all lived together at some point, the four of us on this call, and Hannah, a good friend of ours, lived with us for a while, and Jess, and we had some other roommates here and there, and we just were good friends. I don't know, now we're here, and we all live in different places, but we're all bonded for life, so it's pretty exciting and
Sticking
awesome.
together.
Yes.
Sticking together forever.
We are sisters. We stick together. You know what I mean?
Some of life's biggest celebrations, some of life's biggest heartaches, just the hills and valleys of it all. And as we're called to, right, bear one another's burdens, encourage each other, sharpen one another. And that can look different in different seasons and in different ways. And so just exploring kind of your story and your journey through some of life's deepest valleys, right? Just thank you for your willingness to share your story and to just kind of talk about that with us.
Of course.
I know we all went to your mom's celebration of life. Was that 2 years ago?
It'll be 2 years in November.
I'll let you I want you to share a little bit about your mom just to like honor her and as we continue to talk this conversation. But I just wanted to say like that was like one of the most transformative days. Like that was probably one of the most transformative days for you, especially in your family. But just as, you know, the people around you in your life, that was like one of the most transformative days like for me. And like honestly, shout out to Mama Nepstad because just her story is like so sweet and her faith is like so true and what a woman. So it was awesome to be able to kind of celebrate her life there alongside you.
Yeah, it was a huge blessing to have you guys there with me. As Crystal mentioned, my mom passed away. So a lot of what we're going to talk today about is grief and walking through life together in hardship and learning how to support one another from a true place of love and loving how Christ loves in grief, which is a special love that not a lot of people get to experience at the time that I have. So let's back up a little bit. In the summer of 2022, my mom was starting to feel kind of sick, and she had struggled with a lot of GI issues. And so she was having some stomach pain, but none of us really thought too much of it. It was something she had gone through a lot. But it just kind of kept getting worse, and she was doing a lot of traveling, and I didn't see her much at the time. But everything really happened fast. She was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer on July 31st, 2022. And that was a really hard day for me. But the next hardest day for me was when basically a month later, she decided to stop chemo treatment. So she tried it. She didn't like it. It was really, really hard on her, and she wanted to fight for quality of life, which was a huge lesson, and we can unpack that later as well. But she decided to not do chemo anymore, and that was a really hard thing for me. And I'm like sitting in my living room right now of my apartment, and I'm looking at this beanbag chair across from me. And I'll never forget, I had just gotten back from Crystal's wedding. My dad called me while I was at the airport and told me that, and I drove home. I sobbed the whole way, and I came home and I sat in this beanbag chair and I literally sobbed for like 5 straight hours. I think the people underneath me, because I live on the 3rd floor, were probably like, yo, what is going on? Because it was bad. But yes, that was probably the second worst day of my life. And then I was able to go home for a month. My work graced me with a month of time. Well, really as much time as I needed, but it ended up being another month. So everything kind of happened a month apart. And I went back home to California and I spent a month with my mom as she was in hospice. And she passed away on October 1st, 2022. So it was a huge whirlwind for me. My whole life completely flipped around. I was fine one day and the next, felt like the rug was ripped out from underneath me. And since then, there's been so much suffering and grief and pain that's come forth from that. But there's also been so much beauty and joy. And the Lord's taught me so much. I feel like a completely different person in the best way. And I've really encountered Jesus in a way that I never knew I could. So it's been really beautiful to see something so tragic and so traumatic turn into something so transformative and beautiful. I was able to, like you said, Crystal, have my friends at the service, and my friends and my loved ones have been incredible support for me, and I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, I mean, here we are today, almost 2 years out. So yeah, but I can share a little bit about my mom if you'd like.
I would love that.
Tell us all the good tea about Christina, because the world needs
there's
the
so
world
much
needs
good
to
tea.
know.
The world needs to know. And I'm probably jumping ahead in the conversation a little bit when I say this, but the best thing you can do for somebody who's grieving is give them the opportunity to share about the person that isn't here anymore. When my mom was sick, she would say to us all the time, the moment I truly die is when you guys stop talking about me. And she was a believer, so she knew she wasn't her soul wasn't gonna die, but that concept of earthly death, of just being forgotten and being gone. And so she knew that when we lost touch of remembering her or talking about her, that was when things would be kind of real. And so it's a huge importance for me to share whenever I can. And whenever people ask me, hey, can you tell me something about your mom? I usually end up just sobbing, because it's such a gift, because it gives you an opportunity to talk about the person you love the most. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about her. She was the GOAT, bro. Actually. She was 56 when she passed away.
But looking like a queen who was in her 40s.
Girl, I know. Maybe even 30s. People would always be like, oh my gosh, sisters. And I'd be like, but it was true. She was looking good. She was looking fresh. I can't even lie. She did so much in her life. She jam-packed so much life into every day of her life. What an incredible way to live. And that really taught me a lot in retrospect, looking back at how she operated and how she never took a single day for granted. Every day she wanted every part of it. She was going to go get every moment, every memory, every sunrise, sunset. She wanted everything that she could get from every day. And every person that she was with too. She was a very intentional person. She loved people so much. She made you feel like she was your number one fan and your biggest cheerleader within minutes of meeting her. And that came from a genuine place. It wasn't fake. She wasn't like, yay, you're so great. It was, no, I really love you. I see the beauty and potential in you, and I want you to know that. And so her affirmation and encouragement shaped me so much in how I love others, and I hope one day I can love others in a fraction of the way that she does. But she was very, very empowering and caring. She was very accomplished in her career as well. She was Miss California in 1989. So as Vic said, she was a hottie.
Queen status. Queen status, literally.
She was really looking good. She really was. And so she did that. But in that vanity competition, and this is the beauty of her, she was able to see what the true meaning should be and how to get women there. So for a long time, she would bring beauty pageant contestants to the house. And I remember like watching Miss USA walk down the hallway of my house and like not even think anything of it. But she would work with all these incredible women and teach them how to find true inner beauty. And her business at that time was called The Smile Inside. And she really did have a smile inside. It was really cool. So she would bring that out of people. And then that transitioned into being a mainly interview focused kind of career, and she wrote 3 different books and was all about teaching people how to truly interview from a place of inner beauty and inner confidence and strength instead of just memorizing things people want to hear, and instead understanding that people want to know you. So show that. And really releasing a lot of fear and stuff from people. It was just really cool to watch her do that. And self-employed, straight up boss. And yeah, she just loved her family so much, and she loved the Lord. That's the biggest part of all. Like, I'm finishing with that last, but I should have opened with that. But she loved the Lord so much, like such a model for my faith since I was very, very young, was very open and confident and constant in that love and pursuit of Jesus. And she made it a point that everybody around her knew what she was about, and that it wasn't her that was so great. It was the Holy Spirit within her. And it's just so funny. Like now I'm like underlining things in my Bible and writing things in my margins and giving people Bibles and stuff. And I'm like, my mom did that. Like I just watched her whole life do things like that. And so it's really cool, like to see her impact on me, and now her impact on my brother, and the ways that, you know, I believe the Lord's going to work in his life and his heart because of her faith legacy. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just a big overview. Of course, there were a lot of small things. I'll give you 2 baby things and then I'll stop talking. See, I love the opportunity to talk about her. She never fully ate anything. Like she would take, for example, a Snickers bar, and she would bite a corner off of it and then put the rest in her purse. 2 days later, she'd keep working at it. And me and Heath would be in the car, my brother, and we'd be like, hey, Mom, we're hungry. Like, do you have a snack? She's like, yeah, look through my purse. And I would go through that purse. And it was just little granola bars, Snickers bars, this, that, and the other, half eaten, a quarter eaten. And she just had so much self-discipline, but also, like, didn't care about her food storage. Super interesting. But yeah, you know, there's so many quirks about our loved ones, and so it's fun to share those things. But yeah, so that's kind of an overview.
I'll say it's interesting that a lot of the things you were saying, you know, a lot of the qualities that she had, I was like, I don't know if Hope realizes that she has a lot of those qualities. Like, I think like one of those things is like the hype woman. I always tell people, I was like, I love to have freaking Hope in my corner, because Hope is, I was like, you're one of those people that I'm like, man, if I wanted to move this 100-ton boulder, I was like, if Hope is doing, and I know how you have your little mannerisms where you're like, come on, and you're like clapping. Yeah. And you're clapping, and you're like, you can do it. And I'm like, I could 100% pick up that 100-ton boulder without a problem. As long as I got Hope like cheering me on, like 100%, I got it.
Of course you can.
So I think it's interesting. I was like, a lot of those things, but you have a lot of those qualities that your mom has, and I'm like, they're definitely inside of you, which is really cool to see.
And what I hear you saying from like her story too is that she lived like by example. So I think what a better way to like parent, right, than to just live by example. Now like you and Heath get to like continue that work that she did.
Absolutely.
Just by living and loving the Lord. So I think that's really special.
Thanks.
Before you lost your mom, what were your perspectives on grief? Like, what was your thought process on that?
I don't even think I had a perspective on grief. I didn't really lose anyone in my life. I'd lost a lot of pets, but pet loss is very significant, but it is a little different. I think people can, it depends on how close they are with their pets, but for the most part, people can kind of get back to a state of normal eventually. They'll go get another dog or another cat, you know, and maybe a couple years down the line, they're not thinking as much about the dog, or they'll think about it and go, oh, you know, that was kind of what I had operated with. I lost a ton of dogs, and it was hard, but that was like the only real experience. I'd have like 2 days of crying, and then I would move on. And also I had been told, I don't think anyone taught me, but it was just kind of the general education, so to speak, that there are 5 stages of grief and you go through them, and acceptance, denial, whatever. I'm just going to say right now, that's not true. That's not how it works. It's not a linear process by any means. In fact, it's curvilinear, abstract, and insane. There are no lines. They are all over the place, and they intersect, or they're nowhere to be found all at once. So,
zigzags.
Yeah, oh, heck yeah. So, before Mom died, I mean, I never thought about grief, didn't know what to say to people who were grieving, didn't understand the profound impact that it had on people's lives, didn't give a lot of grace or empathy for people who were going through loss. I remember I had a few peers growing up that had lost parents, but there was no gravity associated with that. Like, I would look at them and be like, oh man, that sucks. But I didn't have any connection, any empathy, or any instruction on how to navigate that. And I think a lot of times you hear, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Prayers. That's pretty much what we're programmed as a society to respond to loss with. And then we say, let me know if there's anything I can do. We don't do anything because we wait for them to tell us, and they never do. And being on that side of it now, I can say when someone asks you what they can do for you, you literally don't know because you're in a state of complete confusion and there's no thoughts. So, those were kind of my perspectives. I didn't have really any, actually.
Yeah. And this like word grief, right, I think can be like used in like different contexts. By your experience, like the definition of grief in its entirety, I guess.
Oh, yeah. You kind of touched on it, that it can be applied to different things.
Yeah.
We grieve things all the time. I'll start very broad. We grieve the loss of a job. We grieve a relationship not working out. We grieve a bad grade on a test. We grieve things all the time. Food that went bad and we didn't realize the spinach was in the back of the fridge. There are a lot of times where we grieve things and we don't really realize we are. And it's just grieving and mourning are different. There's a lot of different breakdowns here. But grief overall, a constant hole that can never be filled, a constant loss that you always live with, that can never be bandaged, but you can grow around it, and it's a part of you. I think grief becomes a part of who you are. When we're talking about losing a loved one specifically, it is something that is in you, and it affects everything you do for the rest of your life, but you become equipped to grow around it and to adapt and carry it with you differently. I don't really know how else to put that into words. I would also say, the pain evolves. The edges soften, but the pain is always there. The hurt is always there, but it does evolve and change. And mourning is more so, well, let me back up a step. Grieving is what was, what happened, and who you lost. Mourning is what you're not going to have as a result of that. So I mourn my future marriage. I mourn my future children. I mourn things like that because my mother's not going to be there for those things. And so those big life things, and even just today, I was like, man, I'd really love to call my mom and tell her how summer workouts are going. And I can't. And so that's grief and mourning, I feel like, at the same time. But I think mourning is also a lot more anticipatory. Like, this is coming down the line and this sucks because she's not going to be there. So a little sloppy on the definition part, but the whole thing is really sloppy. So it's the best I can give you, I think.
Do you feel like the beginning stages after a loss, you spend a lot more time in the grief aspect of it, and then it kind of develops to spending more time in like the mourning aspect of it? I would say
so. I would say that it's hard to put grief on a timeline. It's not just hard, it's actually impossible. And I'm not even 2 years deep, but I have this woman in my life, and she's like a grief mentor to me. And she lost her mom when she was in high school. And I don't think she mourns very much anymore. I think she occasionally does, probably, wishing that her mom could meet her children or watch some of the things that are going on. But I think she's now at a place, and I know my dad, you know what, my dad lost his mother. And so I watch people further down the line, and I think it ends up getting more balanced, where it's just kind of like, yeah, that really sucks, but I have a lot of fond memories and I know she'd be happy. That mentality shifts of like, not this is going to rip my heart out, but instead, oh, I really wish she was here. It's less heavy. But I would say in the early, maybe you could, let's just put an arbitrary 5 years on it. We'll just put 5 years stamp. I would say the first half, like you said, Crystal, is probably more grieving, and the second half's more mourning. But I think there's still a lot of overlap in that.
Yeah.
So, sure. Yeah, like I was talking to a few family members over my break and just sobbing about my future kids and my future marriage and just the pain that still holds. But then today I was like, man, I just miss her. I really miss her. You know, so I think there's a lot of overlap, but if you could fraction it, that's probably fair to say that it does evolve into more mourning, and then it just kind of fades out into just that hole, but you're just so full around it that it doesn't hurt as much.
I know, you know, obviously in private, like as our friendship, we've had a lot of conversations over the last year and a little bit over things that are helpful and things that are unhelpful. And you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I think that was, like you said, like no one really knows what to do or what to say or how to help, because I don't know why that's not something we're educated on as humans, when you've said this before, but it's like the one thing that we all share, like that we will all experience in some facet.
Right.
But if you could touch on a little bit of some of the things that were at the beginning and still are helpful, and some things at the beginning that were not and still are not helpful, I guess. Yes. Both sides of that coin, because I think that's really important, like for people to hear, and I don't think we hear it often enough.
Absolutely. And I'd love your guys' input and feedback on this after as well. Like, I just want to hear what you felt like reaching out to me and what that looked like as well for you guys and what you learned. Yeah. But I will say that things that were helpful and weren't helpful in the early stages. So I kind of touched on it earlier. It's not helpful to say sorry. And it's not helpful to say, let me know if there's anything I can do. Though that's like the dynamic duo. And both of them are just not effective, because sorry, and my grandpa is such a nerd. He's like, well, sorry comes from sorrow, which it does. So it, you know, I think like the true English thing is like, you know, there's sorrow there, but as a griever hearing it, it is received differently. It's like, well, it's not your fault. Like, why are you sorry? I think the way that the English language is now, it's just not valuable, because there's no one to blame. And so you don't have to take any responsibility for that. Like I said, also let me know if there's anything I can do. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am. I don't know what's just happened. I'm completely confused, and I have to try and operate again. And there's like, how am I supposed to ask for help? You feel very disabled and paralyzed already. And then to put the ball back in a griever's court is really harmful and not helpful at all, because they're probably not even going to reach out to you at all. And if they do, they're going to say, I'm okay, I'll let you know. And it just, no one ever helps anybody. Also, things that were very callous, even as a believer, was she's in a better place. Yeah, I know. But she's not here right now, and this is fresh, and I really don't appreciate that. Like, now I can talk about it and be like, oh, you know, mom's doing so great, she's much better now. But early on, when people say that, what it feels like is you're just trying to push down the pain, and you're uncomfortable with it, so you want to talk about something happy, and you want them to get over the pain because you don't like experiencing that with them, because it's heavy. I think that's a big issue a lot of times, is that people feel like they can't handle the pain, so they try and get you to change how you feel about it so they feel better about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right. You're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. We're not going to get anywhere. Thank you so much. And so, that one's a hard one for sure. Not very helpful. Or everything happens for a reason. That's not helpful. I believe that the Lord's will is the Lord's will, and now I'm grateful for what's happened, and I can see how God takes broken things and puts them together like a mosaic. But I still don't necessarily want to say that, oh yeah, that happened for a reason, and God wanted that to happen. Like, sometimes that's a dangerous zone. Yeah. You don't want to go there intentionally. So on the flip side of all of that, to go back to I'm sorry, I'll try and remember all the things I said, and I'll do what I would say instead. Instead of I'm sorry, which comes from a good place, I would say something like, my heart breaks for you. I am so overcome with sorrow for you and your family and what you're going through. That's what I would probably say. Especially as a griever, I would say, to take it a step further, I would say, my heart breaks alongside yours. I feel this pain with you, and it is heavy. That's what I would probably say for that first one. For let me know if there's anything I can do. Don't ask, just do. Hey, I'm going to be over there in 15 minutes. I'm going to do your laundry for you. Hey, I'm sending you a DoorDash, which you guys have done for me. I'm sending you a DoorDash gift card for dinner tonight. I'm doing this. When you just take the initiative and serve, it takes so much pressure off. Like, you feel so relieved, and you didn't even know you needed it. So that's a really great one. They're in a better place. Yeah, I think it was. I would just honestly would probably just skip these last two altogether. I don't even know if I would try and go there, but I would just say, as a believer, if you want to come at it from a believer lens, I would say, I can't wait until there is no more pain and suffering on this earth, and we'll get there one day. Something like that, like where there's optimism and you're pointing it back to Jesus and the hope that he provides and the rescue from death that we have, but you're not undermining or devaluing the sorrow that they feel on this earth. And then the last one of just like everything happens for a reason. I just don't think I'd go there at all. So those are kind of some of the things. And then obviously, like I said, in the very beginning, it's really helpful when you just say, hey, tell me about your mom, or tell me about your brother, or tell me about this person. What did they mean to you? What was their favorite thing? Or, hey, I'm just thinking about her and the legacy that she had. I just want you to know she's not forgotten. Things like that. Those things carry a lot of weight. And I would also say, to take it one step further, everybody wants to reach out to you when it first happens because it's pressing and it's on the front of everybody's minds. But we all live our own lives, and we can become so caught up by our own things. We all have our own burdens to bear, but I've got my cross, right? I have my cross that I have to carry every day. And so when you can see me 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, and you can see that I'm still carrying that cross every day, that is where the best things come from. When people just text me out of the blue, hey, you're on my heart. Like, I know this is hard, and I see you, or I love you, or I'm here, and let's talk about her someday or something. Those are really healing for down the line. And just understanding that a lot really fast in being one of the first responders, like, has value, but there's almost more value in being there when the support is no longer there from the outer rings of your life. And one thing to go back, I'm so sorry, I'm so all over the place. This is a very, like I said, not a linear subject. One thing I also really like to always throw on to the end of a message to a griever is no pressure to respond. That really does something for you, because I'll say in my experience, when my mom died, I had probably 500 messages in my phone. I couldn't even respond to one at a time, let alone 500. And even months afterwards, I would still have like 30 messages unread, and I knew they were there. I would read them, but the exhaustion of grief can be so much that you are like, I really want to respond, but I can't even pick my thumb up. Like, I can't even write out anything to say. That's real. So just adding in no pressure is also really helpful.
The things that you were talking about, I think, is like countercultural almost, because to talk a little bit about, I guess, where I was coming from when this whole situation happened, I felt like I always thought, like when this is a horrible analogy, by the way. This is horrible. Okay. So I'm just letting everyone know. When like a little kid like falls, and you're like, you're fine. Like, oh, what's going on? Like, you kind of distract them.
Yep.
And you just like, I do this with Vic, because Vic and I serve in the 412, and something will happen to a kid, and I just like, whoa, I just grab them and like do like we're flying or something after something happens.
True story.
I felt like that was almost my instinct.
Right.
Which is just be like, you probably don't want to talk about this. You're probably just trying to, you know what I mean? Not go there mentally. Like, we're just gonna be like, like, how can I like make you laugh? How can I, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is probably the polar opposite of what is needed. But it's weird how that was like my instinct.
I think it also plays into the fact that like with those things, it's like, oh, we've fallen and we've hurt our knee. We know it's gonna be fine. We know it's gonna be okay. It's like that part, I'm running off of Crystal's analogy, but we know that part. But when it's something like this that we've never encountered, I think sometimes we get stumped because I'm like, I have no way to relate to you. And it's like, do I really understand like the pain that you're going through? And like, how do I understand so that I can go with this through you? But I've never endured it. So I don't know like what level you're on. It's like you're an entirely different book. And I'm like, I have no idea how to even read this book. And I think that's the part where it's like we kind of start scrambling for things of like we're trying to help.
Yeah.
So we're saying these things like, yeah, like it's okay. Like, you know, all these things, but not really knowing how. And I don't know, for whatever reason, you know, I think even, you know, through you, I've learned a lot about grief, you know, and you can kind of answer this question, Hope. It was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you, but like, do you think grief ever ends? Like, I know you kind of touched on it where it's like the 5 stages of grief, and once you go through them, then like you're good. Do you think grief ever ends? And like, if it does, what does that look like? And if it doesn't, then what does that look like for you?
I don't think it will ever end. I don't. I just think it looks different. I was kind of touching on like with mourning and like that evolution. It does evolve, but it never goes away. Like I will always miss my mom on this earth. Like on this side of eternity, that pain will always be there. I just think, like I said, like you will adapt. You will grow. You will learn coping mechanisms. You will gain support. You will find a way. And with the Lord's strength, you will find a way. Absolutely. So I don't think it ever ends. And I just think you just carry it and you walk with it every day. And it just grows with you. And it's kind of beautiful to see. Like early on, the grief, and I'm kind of taking this analogy from another podcast. I listen to this podcast occasionally called Good Mourning. And they like to reference it as like a grief bomb. And these grief bombs, they come at you like a bomb. Like you're not ready for them. They will knock you off your feet. You're down bad. I would have a grief bomb once a week, maybe more. I'd lock myself in this apartment and I'd deep dive through all my feelings. I'd scroll through all my photos I had of her. I'd listen to her voice memos she left me. And I would just sob and sob and sob and sob. And the pain was so, like, it was so much I'd get sick and my eyes would be puffy the next day at work and stuff. But now I might get a grief bomb maybe once every 3 months and I'll still feel the grief, but it doesn't hit me that hard. I still feel it every single day. I think about her at least 100 times a day, but the sting of death doesn't sting so bad anymore. But it will hit me sometimes. Like it will get me. Like Mother's Day, like that's major. Like things like that will come at you and hit you and you're just like, all right, I'm off the grid. So yeah, I just think it evolves and it changes. And like watching my dad and watching this lady, Sarah, like I don't think they have grief bombs anymore. Like I don't think that happens to them anymore, but they still feel the grief and it impacts how they live and how they operate every day.
Just to kind of end what I was saying, I think something that was helpful that you said, Hope, to us like early on when people are trying to like, they're scrapping at a way to like say something of like substance or value, is that you actually don't need to say much. I thought that was so key because just as a person that is always trying to like say something to like help or like fix a situation, this is like an unfixable situation. And so just to be like, it's okay to just, there's no words. Sometimes there's no words. It's just like being there and like being a presence.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that was helpful. Yeah.
Yes, and I've thought about saying that a couple of times, but I have so many thoughts going through my head. But I'm so glad you brought that up because that is true. Like if you're supporting somebody who's grieving and you, like Vic was saying, you don't know what that pain's like, that's okay. You don't have to know what that pain's like to still support. I think a lot of times just being a listening ear, being a hug, just being a constant and just saying, I love you. Like if you love somebody that's going through something hard, like just tell them that you love them and that you see them. Like that carries so much more weight than trying to write up a 5-paragraph essay about grief when you don't know it. If you don't know it, don't worry about it. Like it's not that I don't want you to worry about it yet.
I have a question because ultimately, you know, the process of grieving and, you know, us losing our parents or just loved ones in general is inevitable. Do you feel like there's any way to honestly prepare for it or work through it? Or is it just kind of like when it happens, that's when the process of working through it kind of begins.
This is a loaded one. This is a tough one, because what I don't want anybody to do is to live in fear. I don't want you to stop living your life so that you can be completely focused on all the people you love, so much so that you just stop living for yourself, and you're just like, do you know what I'm kind of saying? Like, I don't want you to be so, let fear drive you to the point where you run away from everything you were doing and you just sit right in front of your parents and you don't blink. I don't want you to do that, because I don't think that that's smart. But what I do want you to do, or what I would advise you to do, is if your parents call you, pick up. If anybody that you love calls you, pick up. If anybody texts you, pick up. If you have an opportunity to see somebody, see them. Like, I think the best way to have no regrets, and you won't either way, and you shouldn't either way, but to kind of anticipatory no regret lifestyle is to just be sold out on being present. Like, just be as present as you can. Do things like this. Listen to a podcast and learn. Ask questions to people who have gone through it. Support them and walk by them so you know what it looks like on the day-to-day. That's the best way to kind of prepare yourself from a believer's standpoint also. I used to read passages about suffering, and it meant nothing to me. It carried no gravity. I was like, yeah, when you suffer, you'll endure and you'll have perseverance. And I'm like, yeah, but I did not know what that looked like. I did not understand that. Also, when I would read passages like Jesus wept, I'd be like, cool, shortest verse in the Bible, nice, like, cool. Now it's like, oh, I see it now. I get it now. So I think there's a lot of things that you simply can't do to prepare yourself for that. Like, no matter how many passages I could read on suffering, I wouldn't understand what suffering is until I've suffered. And same thing with understanding Jesus's empathy and pain and loss. I didn't get that until now, because I have experienced it. So I think there are things you can do, but also I don't think there are things you can do at the same time.
I think your case is also very like unique, Hope, because I think everyone thinks of the standard of like, you know, what you were saying earlier, like, oh, I'm going to get married and your parents are still kind of in the picture. So I think a lot of people, and I'm sure that you probably were like this, you never thought that your mom would die at such a early stage of your life.
Right, never.
So I think it's hard because you don't know, like, we all know that day is going to come eventually because you can't escape it. But yeah, like, your case is definitely one of the more special ones.
Yes. And I would also say it's different too, because, yeah, I had a month with her. I had time to kind of figure out what was happening. My mom's best friend from high school, she lost her husband suddenly from a heart attack a couple weeks ago. And I went to their funeral, and their funeral was completely different than my mom's because they weren't prepared. They weren't ready. It was a sudden loss. It came with no warning, and those things happen. I can list on my hand at least 10 people that I've known since my mom has died that have gone through sudden loss, and that's a whole nother thing. But if you do have the opportunity to walk through a chronic illness that's going to lead to death, or some kind of situation where you know someone's going to die, like, don't be afraid, lean in. Like, if you have the opportunity to do what I did and just be by my mom's side for a month through some of the worst suffering, physical suffering I've ever seen anyone go through, I could have just been like, I'm just going to go stay somewhere else and I'll see you once a day. No, lean in, be there, have the ugly, messy conversations, cry, sob, feel, yell, like, don't. I think that's a big theme in all of grief and learning as a griever. Lean in, don't run away, because it's going to wait for you. It's going to wait. And one day you're going to go, oh, shoot, here it is. I ran and I ran and I ran, but I can't get away. So I would say, and I'm seeing some of my family members go through that. I jumped in with both feet, not saying that I've mastered this thing by any means, and I've made many mistakes, but I would say one thing I did do well was just being completely surrendered to learning and being completely knee deep in the mess. And that helped me a lot.
Just going back to like your faith throughout this whole experience, I know a lot of times a loss like this or grief like this can push people away from God.
Yes.
And maybe that's like for a moment or a season because there's human nature too. But I guess how was your experience with that? Did you experience like anger against God? Like, how was that resolution, I guess, in like your spirit of like your faith and trust in the Lord and this like sorrow?
That's such a good question. And when I talk to people these days, the majority of what I share is that testimony. And the way that my life with Jesus went from 2D to 3D. I knew Jesus before my mom died to be a loving savior, a rescuer, a redeemer. Oh, and I'm not making like mocking, just it was just like happy. It was like, yay, I love you. Like, you're my bestie. And all these things are still true. But now I see that every tear that leaves my eye is accounted for. Every sorrow that I feel is not forgotten about. It's seen and it's felt by Jesus, a man of sorrows, a son of suffering, a man all too familiar with death. And so that's to kind of give an overview of like, now it's like, I totally see that. But I would say early on, I would say the first 3 to 5 months after my mom died, I was angry at God and I tried to pretend like I wasn't. As a perfectionist, I felt like being angry at God was a sin. It meant I wasn't a good daughter. It meant I wasn't a strong believer because I didn't understand what that looked like. Even though you read the Psalms and David's pissed at God like 24/7. Like all these people in the Bible are pissed, rightfully so. Like life is hard, you know? But who do they take it to? They take it to God. And I did not figure that out when I was reading early on, but now I see that, what that lament is, that anger. And I went to a grief retreat. And as I was filling out, that my church put on, and as I was filling out this little survey, they were asking me a series of questions, like what my grief was looking like and what was happening. I had this realization, like, oh my gosh, God, I am really mad at you. Like, why would you take my mom away? Like, I was actually really mad. I didn't even really realize that because I suppressed it so much, but I was acting out in sin in so many areas. I was so distant from God because I didn't want to be intimate with him. And when you're intimate with somebody, you can bring all of who you are to them. And I couldn't bring that part of myself to God. And so I was distant from God and I was just walking in so much sin and I was so depressed. I would come home and just lay in my bed in the darkness, which you guys know me. I'm not the kind of person who likes a lot of darkness. I like to run around and yell and scream and dance and blast music and sunlight. Yay. I would lay in the darkness and I'd only get up to pee and have a glass of water. I wouldn't even eat. Like I was really down bad because I wasn't real with God and I wasn't bringing forth who I was to him. And once I went to that retreat and I faced that for what it was, that really changed everything for me. When I was able to say, hey, God, you're a big God and you can handle this. Like, if I think you're too small to handle my anger, then yikes, do I even want to follow you in the first place? Like, he can handle it. He's more than capable. And in taking that to him, you'll see his heart for you. That's the cool part. So what I got to see was how much he was caring for me, the ways that he was supporting me and I didn't even know it. Like the chair I would sit in every day and I didn't even realize as I'm sitting down in this chair is holding me up. And he was putting people in my life that were speaking into me. He was providing me with food, water, everything I needed. I'm like, okay, God, you know what? You're good, Father. Like, I'm a little mad at you right now, but let's work it out. So we worked it out for sure, I would say. And I don't have any more anger towards God, but it took time to face that, address that, and walk through that. And what really was the antidote to that, and I kind of mentioned it already, is learning what suffering is and why it's important. And biblical suffering is God's way. Well, not even biblical makes it sound like it's in the Bible, but suffering in our walk as believers is a great tool for the Lord because you walk around so self-sufficient, thinking you can do everything on your own. And then God's like, honey, you're getting distracted. Eyes over here. You need me. Be dependent on me. And so I had to realize, no, God, I'm dependent on you for every breath, every moment, every pain, everything that I'm going through. I actually really need you. I live my whole life not really needing God, and we'll sing, oh, Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. And it's like, no, but like, I need you. That was an evolution for me of like, no, God, I need you. So in watching that suffering refine my character and shape who I am and my wisdom and my, like I said, dependence on God, like that really was the big revelation I had in regard to my anger. Like that really took away a lot of that, because I understood, okay, God, you know what? You can take these broken things and you make them good. You make them beautiful. It's who he is as a God. Yeah, that's how it's kind of evolved. And now I would say my walk with the Lord is the best it's ever been, ever in my whole life, because he's 3D to me. He's 3D. And he's in my mess, and it gets ugly, and he's right there with it. Like, he's like, yeah, bring it on. Let's go, girl. Let's grow. Let's be more Christ-like. Like, let's do it. Let's walk through this. And yeah, and I also think another thing that helps too is that my mom was a believer. And so I think that helps in multiple areas, which I don't have to unpack all of that for the sake of time. But yeah, it's kind of where we're at. And it's a vibe, and I love it. And God is good.
I think that's so good though, Hope, because I think it'd be easy to people to be in the same boat as you of saying, oh, I can't be mad. Either like one direction or other. Either you're totally like out and you're like, okay, peace out, God. Or you're like just pretending, right? It's not like a true relationship where you're just like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. That, like what you're saying, that doesn't scare God. Our questions, our wrestling. God is not afraid of that. And he'll like meet us there. So I think that's like important for people to know that you can be real. You can have like true sentiments and true emotions with the Lord.
There's a lot of reform that can happen in the church, as in any humanly operated system. We all try to be our best and model Christ in all we do. But I do think in regards to grief and in suffering and just education on that, that's a big thing I've learned too. Just like, we just don't know how to walk with God through the hard times. We just don't understand what that should look like. And it's because we go to our Tuesday 9 a.m. Bible studies and we have coffee with our girls, and it's hee hee ha ha. And like, we're just not really in the trenches in America. Like, we're not like, if this is my suffering, like, I can't imagine what people that are really going through it, that are being spiritually persecuted, are going through. Like, we don't actually know suffering. Like, we think we do, but we don't until something like this happens. I know that was kind of a bold thing to say, but I saw that in my own life, just be like with a magnifying glass. Like, hope you don't know a thing about suffering. Hope you have it too good. You have life easy. If this is hard for you, like, imagine being Paul. Imagine being Peter. Imagine being any like people going through it way worse than me. And yeah, we just can get really comfortable and cozy, and it's good and bad thing.
And when I hear you talk, it almost sounds like this is like a wake up call, right? Like, what you've gone through, your experience is like
100%.
When you say going from 2D to 3D, it sounds like it's like, oh, like you're seeing the world and life and just everything in like color now rather than black and white, and the ways God is moving and the depth of emotion and of just things that happen in life. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yes, it makes the good things even better. Like, it enhances life in everything, like in the good things and the bad things. And when people walk through loss now, I am moved in true empathy. Like, I will be sobbing right alongside you, girlfriend. Like, that pain is horrible. I know what that feels like, and I hate that you feel that. So like, that's more enhanced, and I realize the fragility and frailty of life more. But I also see the beauty more. The moments I can talk to my girls, the moments I can give my dad a hug. Every hug just means more. Everything means more in both directions. So that's been really cool to see.
Something that you mentioned earlier, I don't think we ever got to talking to it, was like things that we did to help you. I know you briefly mentioned like giving DoorDash gift cards or doing laundry and stuff like that. Again, like how we mentioned, it's kind of hard because most of us haven't really, or any of us haven't experienced a loss this great in our lives. And I think society does very horrible on teaching us how to handle and support someone, which we've basically unpacked throughout the podcast. But I can remember some of the things that I know I've done, and I think it'd be great to like even talk about or share resources, because like I remember I didn't ask you like, how can I help you? I remember one day we were in your car and I said, what can I do for you in this right like moment? and you really liked the change of the wording in that. And I remember when I was with you one day, you got a little book it was like a Christian mourning book. You remember you got it delivered in the mail. I think I also helped you find some podcasts and send anything I found that had to do with grieving and social media.
Yeah, I think that's key. Like, what was the importance, I guess, of community in that time and space, and like moving forward, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Tati, because yes, no, this is important. This is arguably one of the most important things. Tati, it's you saying all those things. I like remember those moments, and they're sweet, sweet moments to me. So I really appreciate all the ways that you guys have served me and loved on me, and the people who are not here. Major shout out. Like, so many amazing brothers and sisters that have supported me so well. So 2 things. I'm not a big gift giver or receiver. I fail miserably in that category. My mother, ironically, was exceptional in that category. I'm horrible in that category. But there were a couple gifts that I got in the mail that I really, really loved. Some came from you guys. Some came from my mom's friend. She's a good gift giver also. And I remember the first one, Crystal, your mom gave me a teddy bear at my mom's service, and it makes me cry. It's sitting on my chair in my room still, and I look at it every day, and it had such a sweet story, and it was so special to me, and I look at it all the time, and it holds so much in my heart because I remember the sentiments that your mom shared with me, and it was really, really powerful. And then Tati sent me a million gifts, and they're all in various places in my apartment, and I just love them all.
Gave her a stuffed
chicken, all chickens, all chickens, and I love chickens, and Tati knows that, so it's been comforting. I have my little rooster on my couch, and I have, I got my little mug, and I fill it up, and I drink it, and I'm like, hee hee, and I always remember that people love me. And then my mom's friend, Kimmy, who you guys heard, she talked at my mom's service for like 30 minutes. My dad got really pissed. Anyway, oh well, when you're besties, I guess. Anyways, she sent me a really cool thing. I'm looking at it right now. It's this little graphic, and it's 2 heads turned away, and it's like my hair and my mom's hair, and we're sitting on like a moon, and she's got wings on, and it's just cute. Like, it's just cute. And then she also sent me a blanket that has my mom's favorite scripture on it. And it's a picture from my mom's Bible with her handwriting on it. And so things like that are really touching and special. She also sent me a book, and it's designed for people whose moms are living. So I still think it's a good gift for people whose moms are living. But it's a book that says, Mom, I wrote this book about you. And every page is a different prompt. And it's like, Mom, I would tell the world you are. And then it gives you an open space and you can write in. Like, kind of like what little kids would do, but it's more deeper. Mom, I'll always remember this memory. And I write in it frequently. And sometimes as a griever, you fear that you're going to forget the person that you lost. I especially worried about that early on. I mean, I forget the way she sounds and what her ears look like. And like, you actually feel like you're forgetting everything, and you're not, which is great. But books like that are really good to jog your memory. So I think like little gifts like that are really helpful. I'd also say Crystal and Vic flew out here to Colorado the first couple of days that I was here after my mom died. Going back to work was a huge transition, and it was really challenging, and just having them around me during that transition phase was really special. And they didn't really ask, they just kind of did it. And that's kind of like the moral of this story. Like, don't even bother asking, like, just jump in and love. Like, it will always be received. So gifts have been really great. Actions like that, people coming over and cleaning my house for me that live out here, just things like that. Just, there's countless things, there's millions of things, but I think when it comes from a place of love, you're never going to go wrong. So I would just encourage that. Resources, the Good Mourning podcast, I really love. That's been really helpful for me because they're 2 women who lost their moms, so there's a lot of connection there. I resonate with a lot of what they talk about, and they bring a lot of guests on that talk a lot about the science of grief and talk a lot about what it cognitively does to you, because it actually whacks you out. You lose your memory, you can't think straight, you're less efficient, et cetera, et cetera. You're exhausted, fill in the blanks, right? And so they bring a lot of light to those things that we don't often talk about. So I really like that podcast. There's also a podcast called Healing with David Kessler that I really like. That one my mom put us on while she was sick. The best book I have ever read for grief is The Scars That Have Shaped Me. That book taught me a lot about suffering, and that was a huge one for me, was learning about suffering. Also, there are a lot of devotionals. Grief and Loss, 365 Days of Grief and Loss. I'm reading because I have books all around me. Then there's one called Hinds' Feet in High Places, which is more of like an allegory book. I think that's what it's called, where it's like emotions are personified as people, and it's talking about this person going up into the mountains with Jesus, but in walking through hard things in the mountains and the valleys and all that jazz. It's really cool. I can't really explain it, but that's a really great one, and that's been just amazing. And the best one, oh my gosh, how could I forget to talk about this? See, again, the memory is just not the same, but that's okay. Grace. The best thing besides Jesus is therapy, okay? You're never ready to start, so don't try to be ready. Just go in messy as who you are and just be real. I started therapy less than a month after Mom died, and I am so grateful that I did that. So incredibly grateful. It really debunked a lot of things for me. I was worried that I didn't love my mom because I couldn't feel anything. When you're numb, that's just God's way of protecting you from literally being dead also, because the pain's so much. Like when you're numbed out, it's just a protective mechanism that our body does to help us. And so I was numb for a while. I couldn't even cry for weeks. And I'm like, yo, Kim, it's my therapist, shout out. I'm like, yo, Kim, like, what the heck? Like, do I not even love her? Like, what's the deal? She goes, stop. Like, there's no guidebook to this. You can't do it right. You can't do it wrong. You're going to feel everything. You're going to feel nothing. And all of that is okay. So you shouldn't have any shame for how you're feeling. And just things like that. Like we've talked about everything. And that is one of the best resources of all. And that has really helped me connect all the dots and break down some really hard life things.
That's good. So start early and do it often.
Often. Just get your head in a book.
Therapy too.
I know, girl. It's major, bro. It's major. And it's been cool to see my family members evolve in their therapy, because older generations are so stigmatized to it, and they think that you're just like weak and broken and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. We are weak and broken, but it's not a bad thing. And so it's been cool to watch my dad as he thought he didn't need it, and now he goes like once a week. And my aunt didn't think she needed it. Now she goes to 2 different therapists. Homegirl's doubling down, right? So it's been cool to watch them evolve. I'm like, let's go. So yeah.
Is there anything else, like as a closing, I guess, remark, something you really want people to, I guess, take away from this conversation that we haven't mentioned previously?
Yeah, I'm going to double stamp something. Grief is not a problem to be solved, but a friend to be listened to. I don't know who said that, but it is one of the most powerful quotes I've ever heard. And I just want to encourage anyone supporting a griever or a griever, like, it is not a problem to be solved. There is no solution. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's Jesus, and we'll get there when we get there, but not on this side of eternity, baby. But it's a friend to be listened to. There's so much we can learn from it. There's so many ways we can grow through it. It is such a beautiful friend to me, my grief. And it's not something that's wrong with me. It's not something that people should be scared of or shy away from. Listen in, like, learn what you can learn. And you guys have been so incredible about that. I mean, like, I have coworkers and they're just kind of like, yeah. But my friends, like, you guys have carved out hours of your lives listening to me as a friend, learning from grief as a friend. It's been so beautiful to watch you guys give me space to share, to heal, to overcome, to process. It's just it's one of the greatest gifts of all, to know that I have people who want to listen to the pain that I have and to give it space. And that I would just tag off of what I just said and just be like, yeah, like, give grief space. Don't be afraid to ask people about it. Ask people about it. If you know somebody and let's say they lost their brother 5 years ago, ask them about their brother. It's probably been a long time since anybody's asked them that. Yeah. Ask them about their brother or whoever it is, right? And just be an intentional friend that wants to learn from them and learn about that's the best way you can serve them, by learning about the person that they lost and giving them space to share. It's unfortunate that we don't do that as much in society.
I know just in our conversations is you've been able to be that person for so many people now, even like the groups of people that you work with and things like that. So it's encouraging to see like all the things that you've learned and what you really needed and, you know, every day, even now,
Right.
to see how you are kind of like emulating that to others as well, I think is important.
Absolutely. And my mom told me when she was sick that this would happen, and I didn't really believe her. She kept saying, like, Hope, this is going to be the biggest trial of your whole life, but it's going to be the biggest, most powerful testimony of your whole life. And I'd just be like, but I'm not going to be okay. I don't know how to live without you. Valid. That's what I was feeling in the moment. But like, she would say these things and they just wouldn't get in my head. I was just like, no, like, I don't want to hear that. But she was so spot on. Like, you're so right, Crystal, in saying that, because a lot of my testimonies have been that, like, people coming to me and walking through grief for the first time and being able to say, hey, like, I got you. Like, I know you feel like you're on a literal island, and you kind of are, but I'm on an island too. Like, let's learn from each other and let's grow in the Lord and in faith together. And so that's been so incredible to see the Lord use it in my life. And now I can say I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever say that fresh off the whole thing. But now it's like, no. I'm grateful for this. I am, because God is using it. He's using me. He's growing me. He's growing my heart for him. And he is changing and impacting the people in my life. And beautiful things are happening. Incredible testimonies are happening just from my mom's life. And like Crystal said in the very beginning, to come all the way full circle, like that service, that celebration of life brought people to Jesus. Like, my mom's life was not in vain. Like, even though it was shorter than we thought it should have been, it served tremendously and continues to do so. And her life is such an incredible testimony and witness for Jesus Christ. And that's all I can ever hope to be and do through her life and through mine. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome, Hope.
Thank you so much. Love you a million.
Times a million, baby.
Yeah.
A million. Thank you so much for just being raw and real and continuing to just share your story. I know it's going to impact people's lives, and it's encouraging to just see kind of your walk through this as you continue to walk through it. So I'm just grateful for you, blessed by your friendship.
Thank you.
Love you. Thank you for being our first guest on the podcast.
I'm so honored.
We've talked about you so many times, so now people actually get to see and hear you.
I have gotten a few shout outs, so here I am.
Put a face to the legend, guys. Well, thank you everyone for just listening in to this podcast. If there was any nuggets or anything that really stuck out to you guys that were super beneficial, why don't you comment down below? We'd love to just see the ways in which just this topic and this Hope sharing her story in her life has just impacted you guys, because we know it will. So we'll catch you again next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.